Hi everyone, welcome back to Alex C. One of my favorite things about Ninjago is its compelling and memorable villains. The forces that cause the events of the season and oppose our heroes, and the menaces that must be defeated. Ninjago has a lot of greats like the Overlord, Garmadon, Harumi, Moro, Nadakan, the Omega, well, not really the Omega, but we'll get to that later, because in this video I'm going to be ranking every Ninjago villain from worst to best, based on my opinion. Before we begin, a few guidelines. First off, I'll be including mostly main antagonists that have been the main antagonists of their own season. However, there will also be some secondary antagonists that have played some major role. For example, the Mechanic, Mystery, Mr. F, Samukai, Kozu, and Cryptor will be included, since for instance, they were part of a villain team despite not having their own season where they're the main antagonist. Also, I will not include anti-heroes or antagonists that look like villains but haven't really committed any crime. For example, Mamatus won't be included since he's not technically a villain, he was just trying to protect the Storm Amulet. I will also not include Ronin since he constantly switches sides and has been more of an anti-hero more than a villain. Even so, he's the main antagonist of the island. I will also include Misdemeanor since he was technically a very pivotal antagonist in Crystallized, even if she's fairly minor. I will also not include any monsters or creatures, even though they're villains, they're more like mindless beings. So I will not include the Red Devourer, Ojira, the Preeminent, and etc. But that's pretty much all the guidelines. So anyway, Ninjago! Coming in last place, we have Sensei Yang. Of all the Ninjago villains in this list, Yang is in my opinion the worst one on screen. He first appears as a supporting antagonist in Season 5. He is the creator of Jitsu, which is a pivotal concept introduced in this season, and he worked decently in that. Just a fun, terrifying villain who scares the ninja. However, as the main antagonist of the Departed, he's just not very good. There's nothing really interesting about him, and his overall motives are uninspired. He essentially doesn't want to be forgotten, and I don't know, it feels cheaply thought about and like feels very lazy. It's also kind of obvious that nobody will forget him, as he's the creator of Jitsu. Even Cole says this. And again, he has some significance as the creator of the Jitsu, but that doesn't save the fact that Yang is such a poorly conceived and uninteresting villain. He's a good minor villain, but as the main antagonist of The Departed, especially with so many problems, he's just not very good. I do think he has a good backstory scene again, and it kind of feels a little bit tragic, and his ending in conclusion in the special was nicely done, and I think they made the right call. But still, he's just an aggressively mediocre villain compared to everyone else. I don't know anyone who likes the Omega. Maybe you like his cool and intimidating design and voice, but for his character and personality, he's just straight up bad. And there was potential here. He's the leader of the Oni, and the season could have explored some lore with him at the very least. However, they just didn't do that. Instead, he's a soulless, personality-less character who suffered from nothing compelling about him rather than a cool appearance, and that's it. He basically has no motives other than destroy the world, which is understandable as he's the leader of Noni, but what else is there? The season also doesn't address whether or not he's the original Oni or just the current leader. Of course we know he's not the original Oni, but some people might still be confused and not know this. The only reason he's better than Yang is because he at least has some good scenes, such as his first fight scene and introduction, and his fight and dialogue with Garmadon. Still, the Omega is the most wasted and unattractive villain Ninjago ever had, which is disappointing since the Oni trilogy really did some great things that at the end were in the Omega, the ultimate villain himself. Next, we have General Kozu. This is one of the villains in the list who might just be generic generals, but that I'm counting because they had a somewhat prominent role at times. Anyway, there's nothing incredibly disastrous about Kozu, he's just incredibly boring. He has not much personality or character other than being an army commander with 4 arms. And this is both for Season 2 and for Day of the Departed. And talking about that, he's defeating the special doesn't make any sense at all. I'm sure the writers and the special weren't aware that he was also controlled by the helmet. He has a cool design and a few good scenes where he serves and delivers exposition to Garmadon. Overall, he's just boring. At number 23, we have Samukai. Kinda like Kozu, being a more secondary antagonist, but I think Samukai has a bit more things and traits that he does in the pilots, such as being in most action scenes. He even has some backstory. If you see the pilot episode short films, you'll see how he was overthrown by Garmadon as the leader of the Skull King in the underworld. And it's also implied that Wu and Garmadon have fought Samukai before. This is an interesting backstory for a secondary villain. Rather decent, and it sets up his death in the pilots where he betrays Garmadon and tries to get the golden weapons for himself, only to die. His appearance in Death Reported is nothing special, no pun intended, and he's definitely the least interesting of a bunch of the villains in the special. I also don't know why he chose Jay to have revenge with. Maybe not all the villain had any relations with Jay? I don't know. In the end, he has some more traits than Kozu, but he's still a less important or interesting villain. So he's at the very bottom. Now we have Cryptor. I think that Cryptor is probably the most memorable of the three ED of the reported henchmen that made it in. He doesn't have that much backstory like Samukai, as he is created during season events as the leader of the evil Ninjago. But I think his voice and scenes are more entertaining. He has a great evil robot voice, and what I like is how he has a more direct rivalry connection with the ninja, specifically Sein and Nia. Samukai and Kozu didn't have one in my views. I also like how dangerous and rude he is, as he tries to actually kill Sein and Pixel. I also like the overall idea of evil ninjas like Sein in the season overall. However, in Day of the Departed, he's kind of more generic, and his defeat was, God, please don't remind me of this. It's probably the worst defeat I've ever seen in the entire series for a villain, even worse than Kozu's in the same special. Overall, he's more entertaining than Samukai and Kozu, but he's still a secondary villain, so there's not that much there. Oh no, at number 21 we have Krux. Both Krux and Acronix are easily some of the least liked villains in the entire series. Now, much like the season's concepts and theme itself, they are in hindsight a great idea. Essentially the two hands of time, former elemental masters who want revenge. Their designs are also quite cool. How bad could they be? Well, actually pretty bad. I think that the problem with them is their motives. Oh my god. While Yang is the worst villain on the list, he at least had reasonable motives. A bit mediocre, but at least they were not so bad or nonsensical. Krux and Acronix, on the other hand, have the worst motives a Ninjago villain ever had. They essentially just want to be superior and rule over anyone. These motives are even lazier than Yang's and aren't explored at all. They're just evil for the sake of it, almost like the Omega. They also have terrible dialogue, mostly Krux. I don't know who thought these were good lines to be written. Much like the entire season, these lines are just so corny and horribly written. The voice acting also doesn't help that much. I've been talking more about the Time Twins as a whole for now, and not much for Krux just alone. And I'll say that he has a bit less personality than Acronix, not a lot of scenes that are just exposition, and has the most of the terrible lines mentioned earlier. The Time Twins were wasted opportunities, and they're one of the reasons Hands of Time is my least favorite season. Now we have the other Time Twin, Acronix. Both Time Twins are really bad villains, and the reason Acronix is higher than Krux is because I think that Acronix doesn't have as many bad dialogue as Krux, and he has a bit more personality. This personality might be his tech addict and goofier nature compared to Krux, and it might be a bit annoying, but at the same time I think it adds a bit more to him. Besides, he at times does get serious, such as in the finale and in the first episode of the season. He has a really serious nature and is responsible for rapidly aging Wu in a fight with the Time Blade. But once again, these are very poorly written villains. They're better than the last other villains in the list, but by a minimum. Next up we have Aspheera, the first Wolverine villain and one that people have grown to like a bit more and crystallized. But first let's go with her first appearance. In season 11 she is an angry awakened serpentine who wants to superior revenge on Wu. She also takes away Kai's powers and has a fiery design. I think she was pretty cool with the fire sign and was a pair surrounded by the rules of Forbidden Spinjitzu. But her personality and character was very annoying. As the main antagonist of the third chapter, all she does is scream about revenge and run around. This is her defining feature, and she's at times fun to listen to say revenge. She has all the right to be, but it can also be annoying. She also doesn't have that much character development in Season 11. She has a very forward path with a lack of any other characterization, and ultimately isn't that entertaining or compelling. Oh, and then in episode 14 of the season, she's defeated very easily. She could have done more in my opinion. She will probably be one of the top 3 worst villains in the list hadn't it been for her returning crystallized, which kind of surprised me. In part 1, we actually see how she had a lack of trust in the ninja, and more exploration on how she wants revenge and hates Wu so much, and her overall role makes sense, and the ninja freeing her gets sent to jail. She is then recruited by Hirumi for the council, and her interactions with the other villains are pretty well handled. Overall, she kind of works more as a side antagonist rather than a main antagonist, because otherwise she's really annoying. In the end, Aspheera is a character that has good elements here and there, but we're just an average villain, nothing that special. So that's about it for part 1 of my ranking of the Ninjago villains. I hope you enjoyed the video so far. Part 2 will release next week, and hopefully part 3 also. Keep in mind that this list is completely biased, and it's based on my opinion. If any of your favorite or least favorite villains in the list aren't in the places they deserve, remember that this is my opinion, and I completely like to see yours down below in the comment section. Well, anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you all enjoyed it. Again, let me know down in the comments what are your least favorite Ninjago villains, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.